Men desire novelty to such an extent that those who are doing well seek change as much as those who are doing badly. Niccolo Machiavelli. You were told that ambition was holy, that it would save you, sculpt you, crown you. You were taught to chase endlessly, to bleed for goals that shone like distant stars. But no one ever told you what happens when you finally catch them. They don't tell you that ambition often isn't about becoming more. It's about running from what you already are. It's not about building a throne. It's about escaping the terror of standing still. The silence where you would have to face yourself without distraction, without applause, without armour. You think you are awake because you're moving. You think you are strong because you're striving. But what if ambition is not proof of courage, but evidence of fear? Fear that if you ever stop sprinting towards some future triumph, you would have to confront the rawness of the present. The hollow ache inside the castle you are trying so desperately to build. You call it drive, you call it hunger, you call it purpose, but it might just be terror. Terror dressed up in gold and slogans whispering, if you slow down, you will have to feel everything you've been running from. And so you run, not towards something, but away. Away from the trembling truth that the self you're racing to perfect was never broken in the first place. It was simply too quiet for you to recognise. Modern ambition was not born from wonder. It was born from pressure. Pressure to be seen. Pressure to win. Pressure to outpace a ghost shaped by a world that forgot how to be still. You were handed blueprints for success before you even knew what you truly desired. Be bigger. Be faster. Be legendary. Not because your soul demands it, but because the machinery needs you hungry. It needs you convinced that rest is laziness, that stillness is death, that being content is a betrayal of potential. And so you chase metrics instead of meaning. You chase optics instead of truth. You become addicted to the idea of momentum, terrified of what it might mean if the applause stops. They sell you ambition like medicine, but it's a hunger with no cure, a curated set of milestones that shift every time you approach them. So you are never allowed to simply arrive, because arrival would mean questioning. Arrival would mean facing the silence. Arrival would mean wondering, was I ever even driving this machine? Or was I strapped to it, mistaking its acceleration for my own will? Ambition in the modern world is engineered addiction. It is the hunger that validates itself. You are praised for being restless. You are applauded for being insatiable. They tell you it's passion. But passion without stillness is just panic in a mask. And panic is profitable. Every system you move through, career, consumption, even personal growth, thrives on your inability to stop needing more. Because a content soul cannot be sold. But an anxious one is perfect. Machiavelli understood that ambition wasn't born from fullness, it was born from fear. At its root, ambition is a fortress, built brick by invisible brick, around the soft, trembling centre of the self. He wrote of rulers, of control, of survival, not to glorify them, but to reveal them. He knew the pursuit of power was not expansion, it was insulation. You do not chase power because you're whole. You chase it because somewhere deep inside, you know how easily you could be erased. Ambition becomes armour, a shield against helplessness, against humiliation, against the chaos of a world that does not owe you safety. You must appear strong. You must dominate survival so thoroughly that no one can touch you. At least, that's what the fear whispers. And so ambition becomes a silent war. A war against insignificance, against mortality, against the unbearable exposure of being small and fleeting. Machiavelli's wisdom wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. Strip away the speeches, the branding, the noble slogans, and you often find ambition trembling at the centre. Fragile, scared, desperate to build something high enough, to drown out the sound of its own vulnerability. Nietzsche saw a different side of the same terror. For him, ambition was not merely fear of vulnerability, it was fear of meaninglessness. The will to power was not a desire to flourish. It was a desperate refusal to vanish. You build towers not because you believe in heaven, but because you are terrified there is nothing above the clouds. You race forward not because you know the way, but because you are too afraid to stop and listen for the silence. You scream your significance into the void. You hope that if you build loudly enough, beautifully enough, the universe might be compelled to answer. But it never does. And somewhere deep inside, you already know that. You know the void is indifferent. You know that your monuments are made of paper and breath. But the alternative, to stand still, to feel the raw absurdity of being, is so unbearable that you choose motion. You choose striving. You choose hunger. Because the moment you stop chasing, you hear the laughter of the abyss, soft and empty inside your chest. And it is not cruel. It is not mocking. It simply is. And that is what you run from. Not failure, not defeat, but the terrifying truth that you were never promised anything at all. You climb, you sacrifice, you polish your reflection until it gleams under the weight of your ambition. And little by little you forget why you even started, because every achievement demands a version of you to maintain it. A version that must smile just right, post just right, speak just right. You are no longer striving toward freedom. You are maintaining a structure so fragile that the mere thought of stopping feels like blasphemy. You mistake the upkeep of your ambition for growth. But it's not growth, it's survival. You climb not because the summit is calling, but because stopping means facing the possibility that the climb itself was built from fear. You are not chasing a vision. You're being chased by a shadow. The shadow of the life you could have lived without the hunger. The shadow of the self you buried under the machinery. And the higher you climb, the more distant that self becomes. Until one day you look back and realise you built a kingdom, but lost the citizen. You became a ruler of ruins, a monarch of a hollow empire. Stillness. That's the real fear, isn't it? Not losing, not failing, not being judged. Stillness. Because in stillness the game stops. The chase ends, the mask slips, and you are left alone. With the unadorned truth of yourself. No trophies, no followers, no projects to prop you up. Just breathe. Just presence. Just the aching realisation that none of it was ever necessary. To be what you already are. Stillness doesn't strip you of worth. It strips you of delusion. And that is why it terrifies you. Because without the endless noise, you have to feel the weight of every craving you thought you could outrun. You have to touch the hollow spaces inside yourself. You have to grieve the years you spent building castles in a sky that never asked for them. But there is freedom there too. Real freedom. Not the freedom of achievement. Not the freedom of recognition. The freedom of surrender. The freedom of letting go of the climb, the chase, the performance. The freedom of collapsing into being. Of no longer needing to prove your existence. Through effort, through titles, through spectacle. The freedom of realising that you are never broken, that you are never lagging behind, that the ladder you were climbing wasn't leading anywhere at all. Breaking the illusion does not feel triumphant. It feels like grief. Grief for the time spent chasing ghosts. Grief for the self-image you mistook for salvation. Grief for the dreams that were never really yours. But on the other side of grief, there is spaciousness. There is a peace so deep, so devastating, that you wonder how you ever forgot it. You stop clinging. You stop performing. You start breathing in a way you haven't since you were a child. Before the noise, before the hunger, you start to see that the real work was never about building a monument. It was about remembering the ground beneath your feet. It was about returning. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not failing. You're simply waking up. and that awakening has nothing to do with ambition. It has everything to do with the courage to stand still, to face yourself without armor, and to realize you never had to become anything more than this. You never had to climb to deserve yourself. You never had to win to earn your breath. You never had to outrun the silence. You only had to remember that underneath it all, you were already free, and you always were.